crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with host David Lamb and the attorneys of Hollis Wright.
Welcome into the attorneys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Got a really interesting and topical area that we're going to cover in tonight's show. Stick around. We'll introduce our expert that's here to lead us through the conversation on the way. First, though, a couple of reminders at the bottom of your screen. That's ways that you can join our conversation. We love when you do so. Also, don't forget, for every time that the attorneys is on the air, we have attorneys from Hollis Wright standing by live to speak with you. That is a free, off-air, and confidential conversation that is an opportunity that is yours for the taking. So if in the program tonight you want to speak with an actual attorney and you got a question for them, just pick up the phone, give them a call. That is free, confidential, and off air. Leading our conversation from the firm of Hollis Wright, Michael Eldridge. Good to see you, sir. You doing good?
Good to see you tonight, David. Good to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, tonight's conversation, again, is one of those topics that's really timely. A lot of this kind of elder abuse and elder law factors in the news right now.
And it's not the easiest, at any time,
No.
it's not the easiest conversation to have or the easiest thing to work through.
Right.
But certainly is very, very important, and people need to know, because most of us at some point in our life, whether it be our parents, our loved ones, or ourselves, or maybe in situations where we're subjected to this, and that's why we brought in an expert that does this nuanced type of law, in Keith McKerall, to talk about negligent home abuse, elder abuse, and specifically in the state of Alabama. But it's good to have you on tonight. Tell the viewers a little bit about what you do at your law firm and the cases that y'all handle, the negligent home cases and any other cases that y'all specialize in.
Well, first, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and I hope that the audience will be able to pick up some useful, helpful information today. My practice spans 3 states. I practice in Mississippi, Tennessee, and Alabama. I handle mostly personal injury cases. Those include car wrecks, premises liability, workers' compensation, and nursing home has become a passion of mine, so I work those cases usually with the team. We have multifactorial legal and medical input that goes into these cases in order to help us do the best possible job that we can for our clients.
Well, and you know, elder abuse and certainly negligent home abuse and causes of action, people have been injured for whatever reason in a negligent home because of neglect, has been around for a long time. But for me personally, doing similar work, not quite as specialized as you are in this type of work, but it seems like since the COVID-19 pandemic, for whatever reason, there has been a huge uptick in terms of people getting injured or people being neglected in nursing homes. Have you had a similar experience? And if so, you know, if you can speculate as to what's going on there.
Well, nursing homes, by the nature of their very business model, typically operate at levels of staffing that are intended to be but are not always adequate to take care of the patients. With the COVID situation, what you've seen is a lot more pressure on, and this goes for hospital staffs and nursing homes. You see a given number of staff now doing more and more work. So that's been a real difficult problem in Alabama. And one of the things that we're facing now as a challenge for our clients is an order that was entered at the beginning of the COVID pandemic by not only Alabama's governor, but governors around several states, in essence stating that regardless of the cause of injury, if someone is harmed by a nursing home, an emergency room, unless the conduct is intentional during a time when protocols for COVID safety have been implemented by a facility, it's far more difficult to maintain a case right now. So unfortunately, we're having to have conversations with a lot of clients who have family members or loved ones in a facility like a nursing home, that those claims are going to be a little more difficult these days. In fact, a lot more difficult until we get past the pandemic. So you may have heard these kinds of terms like tort reform during election cycles. This is an example of that kind of challenge that we face in this area of litigation right now.
And what are the most common injuries that your practice sees from this nursing home neglect? You know, what exactly has happened to these patients and from the neglect, and what is the actual neglect?
Well, neglect is a big word, big topic, but I can distill it down to the things that I typically see when a family calls. A lot of times a family calls and says, my loved one has developed a bed sore, which is technically called a pressure ulcer because they're caused by pressure. Falls, medication administration, maybe given the wrong medication, medication overdoses, particularly dangerous drugs like pain medication and morphine. We see a lot of cases with folks that fall, preventable falls, preventable pressure ulcers. It can be financial abuse, you can see psychological harm, you can see emotional harm, but typically what I see is the physical harm. Even things as simple as hungry, thirsty patients who are malnourished or who always ask for water when the family comes by to visit, sudden unintended weight loss. There are just so many different things that can happen to a patient in a nursing home when the patient relies upon the staff for everything from getting out of bed to going to the restroom to having breakfast. So we see a lot of different kinds of injuries, but again, the most common are pressure ulcers and injuries from falls, particularly injuries from falls where someone has a head injury.
A question we've got here about what sort of course of action is there to take when it comes to things happening to a loved one in and elder abuse. Are there criminal or civil remedies for elder abuse? Are there options there, either a civil or a criminal remedy? There are several. The most common governmental involvement that we see is when, for example, the Alabama Department of Health comes in or Medicare comes in, either having received a complaint or during a routine visit. So the government can and sometimes does an effective job, but all they can do is really levy fines and implement plans of correction. Those have to be followed after the fact if they're going to be effective. A game plan is not really useful unless you implement it. Yeah. So thing one is the governmental investigation. The second thing, and this is far less common, you can have a criminal case arise out of elder abuse. You've probably seen examples of this on the internet or on the news, but sometimes people do bad things to a nursing home resident, especially dementia patients. So that can involve criminal authorities for a single wrongdoer. And the third area where we see the most robust accountability in this area of law is the civil side where I practice, where we file a lawsuit in order to accomplish several objectives, one of which is to recover some kind of compensation for the family or for the injury victim. But our ultimate goal is always public safety, resident safety. How can we help with this litigation process to try to ensure that this doesn't happen to other families? Time for us to step aside our first break of the evening. Now you know what we're talking about. You probably know somebody who needs to hear it. Might want to give them a call and tell them to tune in. Going to be a really interesting and informative show. As we step aside, a reminder, Hollis Wright all over social media. Just search the term Hollis Wright and you'll find them wherever you are on social media. They are most certainly there. Stay tuned. We are coming right back.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm, and thank you for watching The Attorneys. We hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free and off air. So if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury topics, call, email, or text us. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us button. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and watching The Attorneys.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show 8 years ago, my hope was we would be able to do what we do best, which is to help people answer real-world legal-related issues they have in their life.
People oftentimes are confronting various legal issues and problems in their lives that range across the gamut of legal practice areas. Bankruptcy, criminal law, family law, just to name a few. And to be able to have a 30-minute platform or format to where we can just cover various legal topics once a week, that's obviously the primary focus of the show.
That we would be able to use the resources of the many lawyers we have at this law firm to create a plan that had a lasting impact that also gave back to the community at the same time. And I think we've done just that with the attorneys.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. A reminder before we continue our conversation tonight, attorneys from Hollis Wright are standing by live, so if you want that free, off-air, and confidential opportunity to speak with an actual attorney from Hollis Wright, just pick up the phone and give them a call. Michael?
Keith, you covered a lot in the first segment about the broadness of the word neglect, and you used words like elder abuse and intentional conduct. What is the difference in your mind of neglect in a nursing home and what you would classify as elder abuse?
Let's start with elder abuse because that's something that we see both in an institutional setting like a nursing home or in the community. We see things like abuse in the households where folks may take Social Security checks. Theft of money is so common. We also see situations where elders are neglected or abuse, say, domestic violence. So financial abuse and violence in the home or the community are some areas of abuse that require families to really be proactive and informed and find ways to keep their loved ones safe. Now, where I come in as a litigator, we focus more upon neglect, and the reason for that is neglect can take so many different kinds of forms, like we talked about, could be dehydration or multiple falls that are preventable. Other aspects of neglect are not so obvious, and this is why these cases are so nuanced and so difficult. Take a patient who develops a bed sore. Now, you could have perfectly good staff, well-trained, motivated, trying to do a good job, but if the management doesn't put enough staff into a facility to take care of these patients' needs, for example, turning and repositioning a bedbound patient every 2 hours, that takes money on the payroll, and it takes well-trained, compassionate, caring nurses and aides. So when we look at neglect, we ask, what's the root cause? Is it understaffing? Is it poor training? Was there a problem there that should have been assessed by a multidisciplinary team that needed to be in effect for the residents' safety? So when I talk about neglect, in every case, it's sort of like a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle that we put together with records and consultants, nurses, doctors, lawyers. And so abuse, I really see more out in the community. Sure. Neglect as a more passive but probably more important aspect for residents in a nursing home. That kind of neglect is a big problem and a challenge for us and families.
I want to add too, because I did not know this until I got into some of these cases. I've always heard people talk about bed sores, and I thought it was the term bed sore does not give justice to what they're talking about. I mean, I remember the first time I saw, a severe bed sore. I mean, it goes down to the bone and it can be fatal. I mean, people get septic and it can kill them. So I mean, it's people need to understand these bed sores. This isn't like an ulcer in your mouth. I mean, these are
right. And we refer to these as pressure ulcers to distinguish between the types of skin problems that can occur absent pressure. So if you imagine a patient, for example, paraplegic who's can get out of bed with help, but they're going to be in bed most of the time. Well, a lot of the pressure that you see is right there at the sacral area, at the bottom of the spine, up around the hips and buttocks area. And if a person sits there all day or for too long, pick your time frame on schedules of turning and repositioning, eventually you have less circulation and that skin and tissue begins to die and then can result in infection. And particularly in sacral pressure ulcers, they can be as big as a grapefruit, a golf ball. They can look like a closed over wound or an open hole or somewhere in between. So I always recommend that families be extremely vigilant when they visit their loved ones, because families can spot that just as a nurse can.
Yeah, that's a good segue. We've got a question here, someone who has a loved one in a senior care facility, looking for advice or tips of what they can or should look for. When you speak to folks who have loved ones in a senior care facility, what sort of advice do you give them about what to look for to prevent what you're talking about happening? Any sort of advice or tips that you have to offer for them?
Absolutely, and I really have a lot of them. I'm probably not more than 10 for today. But this process starts even before a resident goes into a nursing home. Mm-hmm. The family really wants to take advantage of some resources like Medicare Compare in order to get some good, well-vetted data about the facility. It's a 5-star program. Families should visit the facility before having a loved one become a resident. Use your eyes, use your nose, use your ears. Is it clean? Are the staff friendly? Do they look motivated? Or are they out back playing with their phones and smoking cigarettes? Very good common sense things you can do. Visit at different times. Nursing homes are real well used to getting visitors kind of during the daytime or after work. Go in the morning, go at 11 o'clock at night. See what's going on for yourself and ask the question, would I want my loved one to live here? And then from there you can take on all kinds of other considerations, but most of those boil down to 2 very important things that all families can do. Be informed and be proactive. Get to know the staff, participate in care plan meetings, visit frequently, get to know other residents, ask if the facility has a resident advisory board. Those are powerful tools where residents of the facility themselves can work with management to address issues like dietary issues or activities, how to get back and forth if people go to church. There are so many things the family can do, but it really all boils down to being informed, being proactive, being compassionate, and spotting problems earlier rather than later.
Yeah, that's good advice. Good advice. All right, time for us to step aside our final break of the evening. We're stepping aside. More of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm attorney Bobby Bell with Hollis Wright Law Firm. In today's world, social media is all around us. It is common for many people to post on social media regarding their life and activities on a daily basis. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and similar social media are a great way to stay connected to others and to share your experiences and thoughts. Some seemingly innocent social media posts, however, can have devastating effects if you're involved in litigation, especially in a personal injury claim, a contested divorce, or a child custody battle. Courts regularly allow adverse parties access to the other side's social media accounts, allowing relevant posts to be presented as evidence. These rules have allowed social media to become a hotbed of information in the litigation world. In fact, we are seeing more and more preservation orders issued by courts requiring you to collect and save any and all social media activity. Therefore, it's advisable that even before there's litigation, lawyers should advise their clients that social media content may be discoverable. Here are a few helpful tips. 1. Do not post anything about the case. This includes posts regarding conversations or meetings with your attorneys, remarks about your injuries, negative remarks about the opposing party. Do not post anything you would not want read in open court to either a judge or a jury. 2. Avoid new friend requests from people you do not know. Many law firms and insurance offices may attempt to have employees follow you on social media in an attempt to gain information. 3. Limit adding new photos, check-ins, photo tagging, etc. Seemingly innocent posts may be used against you. Regular check-ins at restaurants, parties, or other events with friends can cast doubt on any claims of loss of enjoyment of life, pain and suffering, or emotional distress, since you appear to be living life as usual. 4. Increase your privacy settings. Many social media sites frequently update and change their privacy settings. In the litigation context, it is possible you may have to preserve and present anything you posted. Therefore, we encourage you to be smart and careful when using social media. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys on WETM 13.
Welcome back in to the attorneys. Just a few minutes remaining, about 6.5 minutes. So if you want to take advantage of that opportunity to speak with the attorneys from Hollis Wright who are standing by live just to speak with you, you got about 6 minutes to do so. Michael?
So one of the things I was thinking about, and I think it kind of goes without question, that the reason all the things happen that you're talking about tonight is because elderly people are inherently vulnerable, just like children. But are they equally vulnerable? Are there certain types of patients or people that are family members that are more vulnerable than others in your experience that you've seen from the neglect and abuse cases?
The short answer is yes. There are some patients, some residents in nursing homes who are at far greater risk of either being abused or neglected or at risk of certain types of injury. So those are two different points, and they're both important. For example, probably the most vulnerable residents to certain kinds of neglect that lead to bed sores or falls are those with dementia. And we have an aging population with a lot of dementia, so we see a lot of residents who, for example, may be a greater fall risk simply because of dementia, or they may not know where they are and they try to elope. So dementia patients are probably the most vulnerable patients when it comes to susceptibility to abuse or neglect. But there's another thing that's floating out there, especially here in the South, and that's diabetes. And what people can learn and know in order to help their family member better is that all residents, or nearly all residents with significant diabetes or circulatory problems, are at greater risk for development of bed sores. So with that one tidbit of medical knowledge, a family can be on the lookout to find ways to help prevent those kinds of things. Is my loved one active? Do they get them out of bed? Do they go to physical therapy and activities and change positions? So even a condition like diabetes can create a whole universe of other considerations that a proactive and informed family can take into consideration when working with the nursing home for their loved one's best health, well-being, and just overall quality of life.
And we've talked a lot about what the families can do to be proactive. And as you mentioned earlier, this is about public health and public safety, and we want this to end, right? We want to resolve the problem, even though it'll never completely resolve. But what are some things in your experience that you think that these long-term care facilities and these nursing homes can implement or focus on to minimize this type of neglect?
The two biggest things are staffing and training. If you have enough staff to take care of patients whose needs are broad and deep, that goes a long way. Even nursing aides, they all have a role in there's dietary, physical therapy. There's all kinds of different multidisciplinary teams that can come in and help. But again, adequate staffing opens the door to quality operations. Adequate training takes people who have had some training and individualizes their training to how the facility operates. Facilities have different ways of doing some of the same things. So all day, every day, staffing and training, and I hope that nursing homes will follow those tips, because if everyone's working together, residents, patients are healthier, happier, and better off.
Completely agree.
Real quick, what is a care plan? Can you summarize that for us? Define that.
A care plan is the keystone. It's the roadmap for skilled nursing care. So if your loved one comes into a skilled nursing facility or nursing home, there's a multidisciplinary assessment process that goes into everything from psychiatry to physical therapy, activities of daily living, and the care plan is individualized, comprehensive, and is individualized for each and every resident, not just all residents with bed sores or all residents with fall risk or all residents with dementia. So a good comprehensive individualized care plan will give the staff all the tools and information they need to care for a particular resident's individualized conditions. Okay. But I'll say this frequently, a good game plan is useless unless it's followed.
Right.
So that's where family members can get involved in those care plans and help facilitate the utility of a well-done plan.
We are just about out of time, like a minute and a half remaining in the show, but want to give you time for a final thought to leave for our viewers.
I recommend being informed, being proactive, and visiting frequently for every family that has a loved one in a nursing facility. And just those simple things, listen, look, learn, and do the right thing. And visit, help, take your loved one on outings if you can. It's just the more focus you have from that family support system to supplement what's being provided in a skilled nursing facility, accidents and injuries can be prevented and everyone's better off.
Yeah, I mean, my big takeaway, Keith, is from what you said, is just to be vigilant. Don't assume that when you turn your loved ones over in this vulnerable state that people are going to take care of them in the manner that they need and they deserve and they require. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to show up.
That's right.
Because these people are vulnerable and they're in their most vulnerable state of their life since they were an infant, and they need good care plans. So I think that's really important. I think that's really important for our viewers to have that information.
Yeah, great takeaway. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, really appreciate both of you being with us tonight. And we really appreciate you joining us as well. Hope this was beneficial to you. A tough conversation, but a one that we need to have for sure. Thanks so much for the time. We really appreciate it. We'll look for you next time right here on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.